You have an idea that's valid, that people are interested in, they just don't want to pay. How much is that idea worth? Maybe not much, because there's no revenue attached to it. You got to go beyond the product development features and on the ability to have multiple different types of assets that complement the business. The founder needs to be in control of the vision.
Welcome everyone to this new episode of Let's Talk. I'm super happy today to be with Pedro Goes. Pedro, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Thomas, for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
And thanks for joining us today. I have many questions. So I have a three round of questions just to get started. The first one is maybe if you could introduce yourself in one or two sentences.
Yeah, I'm Pedro, part of InEvent. I'm currently CEO. I co-founded the company with two colleagues from college, and we do event management. We do have a platform that allows clients to print their badges on site, create amazing experiences when it comes to ticketing registration, and we do all of this with our global team operating today in 30 countries. So it's pretty interesting.
The two follow-up questions from the introductions are the state of the art of Pedro Goes. What do I mean by that? What are you currently excited about? So it can be, of course, the mission of the company, but maybe latest developments or things that got your attention. There is no right answer. Just I'm curious to learn more about yourself and what you find interesting lately.
I mean, the AI developments that we've seen recently, they are amazing. We have been working with several advancements. Like one of the things that I found with AI is that most people think that AI is talking to the computer, right? It's a prompt that you have something to type on, and that's the experience. And we found out that especially in event technology, you have so many uses for AI that you can develop on the platform that I've been amazed with everything that the team has built. So we have, for example, this product called Photo Match that allows you to take photos of others and then it automatically captures where you are in all those photos among your friends. And then you can create branding experiences. So you can basically find yourself and say, like, I want to download the photo, already comes with the sponsor logo. And that's a good example of like AI. That's not something that you have to type. That's not something that you have to engage with a prompt. All that you have to do is download a photo, take a photo, and the rest of the AI does everything for you.
Before diving into the company and more technical things, or I don't know, I have many questions, but I would be super curious if that's possible for you to share a few moments that show a retrospective of, let's say, you're at university to today, maybe key moments where you can share some insights with us about your journey.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we started the company with very little money. We had maybe a bit of money to register the domain. Initially, it was called inevent.us because .com was too expensive, and we decided to go with US because I think it was $8 or $7 at the time, and that's all that we could afford, to purchase. So we operated the company in event.us for maybe 6 or 7 years before we became .com, and we had others. So I mean, you can start with very little money. The challenge is always scaling because scaling is really expensive. You need people, and people's salaries these days, especially on event technology, are quite high. So this was a challenge for us as we grew through the years. One of the key moments that we had was figure out the product that we thought was going to be successful because we started as a mobile app company. So what we did was interactions for our customers, like sending questions, engaging with polling on the event, maybe get networking going. And customers, they really like that, but they're like, I don't have a lot of budget to allocate for an event app. Where my money really is like on registration, on badge printing, on like things that are going to be things that are more like essential, I would say, to the event to operate. Without them, they cannot happen. So we had to shift the company like two times to afford and build these products because we need to have the hardware, we need to have all the technologies available there and ship that to the client. So that was one big change that we did. It took us 3 years. And the second big change was the pandemic. So we're there, like doing our operations, going to events, out of nowhere, everything shut down. So we had to be a brand new product called Live Studio back then. Um, it was a lot of hours, a lot of sleepless nights, but our team did it. It took about 6 months, and we created this amazing virtual platform as well during the pandemic. It lasted 2 years. Everybody now has got to in person, but we got to adapt really quickly, accept the reality. We could be complaining that, oh, like, we're not selling our products anymore, our revenue is dropping. So what do? We can cry, but we decided not to do that. We just accepted it. We need to create something new, and that has been successful for us in that scenario.
Yeah, having this mindset of, all right, what can I do? Like
Yeah.
things that I can control are not useful to worry about. Amazing. So one of the first question that I have is funding in general, and so I know you've been through YC. I think it was 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Can you share your vision about when you're a founder and you have to go about fundraising, either with an accelerator like YC or maybe later stages? Like, how do you see it? How do you approach it with the success that you're seeing with the company?
One important thing to, like, when we got to Combinator back in 2019, people asked me, how did you manage to get accepted? And one thing is that we applied for 5 years. We applied for multiple years before we got accepted. So it's a learning process, right? It's about showing the right metrics. It's about showing how the company is going to be able to grow really big and have the right vision. Sometimes you do have some knowledge, some insights, but they're not enough, to compete on a global level. So you got to still mature the idea and know it's only no at that present moment. It's not never no forever, right? So getting your vision going and get implemented and showing that you have the strength to implement a successful product in a competitive space where most of the market today is. You're already going to have competitors everywhere, so it's important that you dominate your niche and be able to show some growth. So we did that. We have been able then to be accepted in Y Combinator. We actually didn't believe that they would got accepted. We went to the final meeting that we had there in person. It was really interesting. We met with four of the partners at Y Combinator, and about and they told us maybe in a few hours you're gonna get a call. It was 11 a.m. in the morning, and it was already 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We didn't get the call, and we said maybe we didn't get in. That's fine. Let's find keep working. And then we went for the supermarket, Walmart, to get some things for to cook dinner. And they called us. They called us that right there at 6:30, almost 7 p.m. They called us and they say, like, you guys are in. And we said, we started screaming so high that they, like, they said, guys, please leave Walmart right now. So it was an interesting story back from our early days that we were so happy that we got accepted, and we value the community a lot. So um, it's not just the money, also the reputation that comes with it, the knowledge of, like, figuring out complex problems and how to deal with, you know insight information. Like, we receive all those things to as part of the community, and has been really helpful to have this funding and allowed us to grow from where we were to today, almost 15x since we were part of the program. So we're more than grateful to participate in there and be part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that you mentioned, and I think that I see YC the same way. It's not necessarily about the funding, but about like the you have then a badge that shows certain skill set that were validated. And so I'd like to ask you about that skill set. I'm thinking of multiple things, let's say communication or prioritization. It seems that when you're doing a project in such a competitive landscape, the difference is going to be placed in the people and how well you allocate resources so that you have an advantage in the speed at which you're growing and executing and shipping and learning. So do you have insights regarding productivity? So we can do multiple sides, but I'm super curious about productivity, time management, and communication and aligning the team. So pick whatever you like the most.
It's really hard to find one product that's going to be a winner, right? So this is something really hard. You can have a lot of products that are going to be average market, like sales wise or something. But creating one product that's going to sell above others, it needs to be really unique, right? It needs to have some type of very difficult development process that took you many, many years to figure out, or something that took an extensive amount of time to develop this product, or extensive amount of investments to get this product to market. Because then once you create a successful product, you're going to be able to dominate and not have competition in that landscape anymore. So it's a balance between you saying which product I can do to be a winner with the least amount of resources, right? Because if you have infinite amount of resources, you can definitely build, something really complex, and maybe even take like products that are going to require you to revolutionize an entire space. But most startups, they have maybe a few million to get started. Maybe they raise, 500,000 or so on. So what's the one thing that you can use, so you can use that to fuel your growth, and then later you're going to maybe require more investment, or use your own revenue to finance your operation. For us, we figured out that this was going to be operations for registration and having clients with running conferences and using our badge printing technology and all those things. There are other things that we didn't make so much money, like mobile apps, for example, right? But that's something that we had to figure out in our own niche, how to prioritize. There is no magic, right? If someone already knew this, they would do this themselves. Like, the challenge of business is not really building the company, right? Is actually figuring out what you need to build, right? Because if someone told you in the past, hey, Bitcoin is going to be worth, $100,000 today, buying Bitcoin was easy, right? The thing is, like, being 100% sure that you're going to leave your money there for 12 years. That's the hard part. It's knowing is not really the process of executing if you already know it.
Do you have a method to take educated guesses? And so we have all these ideas of, yeah, you just need to be right one time out of 10, but make sure that when you're wrong, you don't lose everything so that you get game over. Do you have insights on how you've managed to take bets? I'm thinking of multiple things to do decision making in a company, and so I'll share you those with them, and maybe you can share your thinking process. But so we were mentioning allocating resources. We were mentioning knowing what we're going to build, like what's the minimum, like the minimum effort with the highest leverage. But even that, it seems very hard because in the theory, yeah, we know that we need to do that, but how do I manage to systematize maybe the learnings that I get from the customers, or like the entire sales team that is learning with the customers? How do I centralize all this knowledge so that I can have a big picture that allows me to take the best decisions? So I guess my question is, how do you systematize, or do you have any way of prioritizing or taking educated guesses to try to bet on the right things? Any process that you could share with us?
I think it's important that ownership belongs to the founder, to the CEO, of what the company is going to do, right? It's never something that you can outsource to your team. At least that's my view. You cannot say, for example, the company is going to do X. You have to define what X is or Y is, right? That's something that's part of your vision, right? Why you started the company. Sometimes a company may actually fulfill that vision, and you have to find a new thing for the company to do. That may happen as well. But I think sometimes founders, they have the initial idea, and then the company doesn't become that successful. They try to outsource this to someone else, to the investors, to third parties, to employees, and that will not work out. It's always important that founders have that vision very clear. Sometimes it's not so clear, but we need to keep pushing forward and trying to figure out what that happens. The process that I have myself to do this is I have my knowledge into that specific space that we're operating in, which is event technology, and then I use reporting, I use connections in the market, I use research that I read on LinkedIn, and also what people tell me, and also all the connections that we have with our customers to define new products, to define things where I think the market's gonna go, right? um, but in the end of the day, it's really about your vision that you have as a founder. There is, like, people can come and tell you like AI is going to be a big thing, right? We hear that all the time. It's you, the founder, that have to determine, the CEO, am I a really believer, a big believer that this is going to be, yes or no? And you got to make that decision, based on your thoughts, based on what you think the market, how the future is going to be, right? We believe in AI, right? Some other competitors may not. So we bet on AI. We put investments on it, and hopefully we're going to be successful. Yeah,
That's hard to. I've read some posts on LinkedIn about people saying no, we won't adopt AI, and I'm like,
yeah.
won't you? I mean, people we've been adopting AI for the past 20 years, maybe more classical machine learning. So
But AI, just on that idea, if you see AI, it's one of the industries that's not. It has some limitations as well, right? Because, for
all right.
example, other labor-intensive areas they have a higher degree of growth in terms of cost than AI itself. For example, the cost for adding AI is decreasing, right? While, for example, the cost of healthcare has increased 2.5x for the past 5 years, right? So if you think about this, maybe it's best to pursue a career on healthcare, right? Where you're going to be paid more, like the costs are increasing, than AI, where the costs are going down, right? My point is, there is never 100% certainty. It's like there is a combination of factors, and you have to put together what do you think the game is going to be in the end. It's not obvious sometimes.
Yes, you take educated guesses and you inform yourself, but it's like a scientific approach where you like in the end you need that first hypothesis before you start gathering the data, talking to your customers, and then you can connect the oh yeah, but all of them are talking about those pains, but if you don't have that premise, that hypothesis in the first place, then it's just random data that is useless or that we can put in different ways to look in different to have different aspects. So I really like this. Yeah, I have an hypothesis, and this is my founder. So I take this home with me. This learning of yeah, you just have to have this hypothesis, and that's what we expect from the founders.
I can share one thought on this that you just said: the importance of connecting your, ideation process to the reality. For example, we had a lot of reports early in the company saying that gamification, for example, is something that customers really wanted, right? So when we talk about the event app or innovative, because we always put ourselves there as like we are the innovation in the event tech space, right? A lot of customers came to us and say, I want to use you for gamification, right? I want to use you for some type of games or scavenger hunts or so. And this was really frequent. It still is. A lot of people ask that. But then once we start saying, maybe we should price it, right? We should put a price on how much that's going to be, and start charging customers. And what we realize is that customers don't want to pay for gamification, right? They want to say, oh, it's really cool, but I don't want to pay for it, right? And while this is happening at the same time, we get to charge them 10, 15 times more when it comes to badge printing, even though it's something that's not that cool. So my point is, you have an idea that's valid, that people are interested in, they just don't want to pay. So how much is that idea worth? Maybe not much, because there's no revenue attached to it. So exactly, this validation process is really important. Only data from the market can do that. Yeah.
Right. You have your hypotheses, you need to test them. Putting the price seems like a no-brainer, and I think that. Well, do you have insights? Because maybe sometimes, okay, so this is something I'm curious and I've heard before, and so I think you're the right person to ask. We always hear in the founder mode or anyone who is like trying to build things with a vision, like the focus, right? Just to one thing, very specific, very niche. Don't try to think about scaling. Maybe you can disagree here, but what I'm curious about is that in practice, when we look at how really these companies are growing and what they're doing, it feels to me that a lot of the times they need to gather some thoughts and test some things before being able to know how to focus. Because if we focus too early, we might miss something. And so my point here is that when we hear about being focused on a specific mission or a specific task or a specific problem, it seems that it's not as easy as it sounds, in a way that we can really focus once we've failed and learned the hard way some learnings and insights about the industry and how it works. And so then we can like have a feeling of what right looks like, and then we can prune everything that is not relevant and very focusing. But it doesn't seem like a straightforward process. Like day one, we're going to be super focused, super laser, and maybe sometimes it needs to like grow in different directions and then do the pruning of focusing. So I wanted to have your thought on how do you approach that, even like at your stage. Do you feel that sometimes you need to grow in different directions and then like cut some different branches that you've started growing because no, it's not the right direction, so we won't go there, and we put a stop. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the going back to what I said before, the founder needs to be in control of the vision, right? So what I mean by that is that you start a company and then you figure out something that's working, right? For example, you're selling. Going back to our example, like we're selling mobile apps, right? They're selling. It's not that we're not doing any type of business, but we realize, hey, maybe we can fulfill other requests. So once you start with a product that's already selling, you can allocate a team to it, right? You can get the support going, you can get the sales team going, you can get some marketing teams going on that, and they're selling the product. They're putting out the communications, doing the daily work that's needed to get an operation going. But then at the same time, every now and then you have a new connection, or someone posts a request on the website that's different, right? Maybe they don't have the need anymore for mobile apps. They want to talk about travel, right? So you as the founder, you can take the meeting, right? You can take that request and you meet with them and you ask questions, right? So why do you want to connect travel with events? Why do you want to have hotels? Why do you want to do, and you keep asking questions. And based on these things, you can figure out, hey, maybe there is some interest here to create a new product, right? Then you can go ahead and say, let's validate this. Let's create a thesis, right? The thesis is we're going to create a product that automatically connects the flights with the agenda of the event, right? And you start selling this. You create a landing page to validate this. Does it make sense? Are people actually searching this on Google? Is that something that we can sponsor an event and people are actually going to? Maybe there is, maybe there is not, and the page is a failure, right? But you, as a founder, you're validating this. You're doing this approach of seeing if there is some revenue behind it, and if there is, then you can actually say, "Oh, this is working." Maybe now we need to allocate a team. Maybe we need to create a more, you know, feature rich product, right? And oh, there is more revenue coming in, and then it becomes a huger part of the business. So it's all about keep validating the idea as a founder until the day that you say, oh, this is already established, we're doing X amount of revenue. I can actually have paid people, two, three people to run this independently now from me, and then you can focus on developing the third product, right? So um, you need to keep running the tests yourself. That's basically the idea behind it.
Keep your eyes on the ball, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So I'd like to ask you about the end-to-end aspect of the company. So I would assume that you didn't had when you were at universities with your friends, you didn't have the idea of having the end-to-end platform. You mentioned before, correct me if I'm wrong, that even like the app is not what have been generating the most success for you. So I would be super curious to learn first of all, how did you become end to end? Like, at what point did you start doing more things? So I would assume it's an iterative process, and you get needs and you validate and so on. But I would be curious to have your version of the story of how did you grow into an end to end platform, and what are your thoughts about the end to end, like being an end to end platform? Like, is there an alternative way of doing things? I don't know. That's maybe a sensible question, but yeah, I'm just curious about like being end to end. At what point did it become clear that okay, we're going to do all these things because this is going to be our value proposition, and we're going to, yeah. If you have some insights or thoughts about that.
I'm a computer engineer by trade, so I think about product as the most important thing in the way that I need to spend all my time with product only. And when I say this, I say in disregard of the other functions. Like I should spend time developing the product and not really on marketing, on sales, on partnerships, on anything else, right? That was my initial idea as a founder when I was starting. But then you realize that there are other things as valuable that you need to treat as assets as the product itself. So product is one asset, but the channel is also a big asset, right? The ability for you to have on a channel to reach out millions of people. What I mean by that is you can have, for example, your app installed on millions of cell phones, or you have a database with an open rate of 50%, and you can send a new product there and people are going to buy. Or you have a Salesforce directly connected to thousands of customers that you launch a new thing, you can promote to them, and the next day already 50% of those customers can start already using this product. Or it's a new app that you just put together on like the App Center download, a new app that's free in a new category. Customers can just go there because they're doing this every day, and they can start using this app. So this channel, this thing, that can be a website, can be a news list, can be Salesforce, a force that allows you to sell. This is really powerful, right? So you need to spend time developing those things. This is a big asset, the channel that you use to get there. And the same thing for your product. You need to spend time building the product and making sure it works. But it's the combination of all those things, developing assets among various parts of the business, on sales, on marketing, on the channels, on the delivery channels, that makes you successful, and that makes the companies resilient to growth. So um, you gotta go beyond the product development features, and work more as well on the ability to have multiple different types of assets that complement the business. That's where you become really successful. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you about AI, but before doing so, when I say AI, I mean classical machine learning and generative AI. But before asking you about that, we mentioned a little bit productivity before, and you shared some insights. Would you have some thoughts or insights regarding which actions are you going to take next, or which action are you going to delegate? And so I guess it's related to what I asked before, but it seems to me that this priority system of what only myself can do that will have the highest impact on like today and this week to push the entire business forward. Do you have insights, follow-ups on this question?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I like to do is I get a big piece of paper, and I like to put the entire journey of the customer. Like very logical thing. Like I know you go to the website, like so you draw a website, and then what do they have to do there? Oh, they need to get a quote. They need to talk to a salesperson. They need to read about this product. So you put right there, like you need to have this video talking about this. You need to have like this pricing, because pricing is important. We've had figure out. Okay, so they click here. What's the next step? Well, the next step is they're gonna meet with a salesperson, right? So we need a system to capture this booking, right, and send them to a communication system like one of these IM platforms, Teams or whatever. So we need to do integration. So we just put there like integration, like write the integration so you can get the notification. The next step, right, send an email to the customer. Third, fourth step, put together a demo. So create the demo and what's going to happen during this demo. So you put a script like the demo is going to be for 30 minutes. So minute one is going to happen that. Minute five is going to happen this. Minute 10 is going to happen this. You're going to show this. So everything is written down, what the operation is going to be. Then it goes to support. Oh, support. The customer will contact us through email or through phone. If it's phone, like who's going to answer? So we're going to find a system that allows a routing for the agents. So we are going to operate these hours. So we need, 10 people to operate. So we put their rotation on the calendar, which times they're going to be there. So you just keep building those things and creating documentation, like on a big sheet that I like to start on paper. But then you put this online, you create those systems, and basically the operation becomes resilient. So if we start seeing points of failure. So what happens if one person is sick? So do you have a replacement? So we call this person using this system. Um, and once you do this for many, many hours, basically the system becomes really reliable. So you don't have to keep, putting out fires. The system will be able to automatically recover itself because already planned for that situation is already happened in the past. The solution was applied that was this, and basically just reapply the solution, and the system keeps going without you having to manage everything.
Oh, makes sense. Okay, so you have like a big map of, so it's like you're forced to be a UX designer. You need to like constantly rethink of the end-to-end experience, end-to-end journey. In terms of personas, like do you do different maps based on who is going to use how, or like at what stage, or Like, do you do different maps, or do you have like a big map of the entire end-to-end options that a specific users can face?
Yeah, so I have a big map for maybe me and the other founders, something that we access and we have everything mapped out. But then, like when you come to each area, we try to segment what's relevant only for these people, because then if you share everything, there is another problem that happens, which is a overflow of information, right? Um, if you give too much to every single person across the company, they get overwhelmed with everything they have to learn and they don't focus on their specific task, right? So sometimes it's best for you to say, like, your job is that you're going to be, for example, answering clients on the chat, right? So best to train them on what the chat is, how to use that, what the knowledge that they need to know to reply to customer, but they don't need to know about SEO for marketing, you know, or they don't need to know the pricing strategy, like behind our, you know, our calculator, or how we put together the quotes. So we avoid wasting their times on things that don't really matter for their job, so the company can be more efficient. So that's also important, but that only happens after the company has scaled a little bit. Like if you are just starting, you and four people, you and five people, and like you have one or two employees, you can share everything in the beginning, but as you scale, it's good to segment their specific piece. Yeah.
But that leads me to my AI question, and then I'll connect. I think this one connects nicely with. I wanted to ask you more about leadership because you have a unique way of operating. Everyone is remote, so maybe let's I'll keep postponing AI. Um, how do you see leadership, and what are the benefits of remote? There is a lot of debate regarding coming back to the office, or but you're fully committed, 30 plus countries, fully remote. Um, so what's like, how do you approach leadership? Like, how do you share the message that you have for the company, and the sense of urgency when you're fully remote and in 30 plus countries, where you can have different time zones, so it might be sometimes complicated to have everyone at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think you need to be extremely fair when it comes to running a remote company. You need to have rules that everyone needs to know that they're mandatory and everybody needs to follow them. For example, when you talk about time zones, we tell the company operates today in the Eastern time zone, right? So it's New York time, Atlanta time, where I am, but that's the main time zone that the company operates in. And we tell people, look, you need to operate on these hours. You can be anywhere, but it's important for us to be there. Unless, of course, you're in the European team, who also operates in the UK time. Now, when we say that, you need to understand what's really essential for the company to operate and the things that are not essential. For example, people being on time. That's really important for us, right? Something that I was late myself today. But you need to be understand that this is a problem, right? You need to be on time because we're coordinating times across many, many regions. Um, and if the person is recurrently missing meetings, if the person is currently recurrently late, maybe they are not a good fit for the company, right? And we need to tell them that very transparently. We need to say, look, you're missing those meetings. That's not part of the event culture. Maybe you need to be successful somewhere else. Like here, you're not going to find that space, right? The same time that you also require certain things from them, you also need to understand the limits. So for example, if it's off business hours, right, what's really an emergency? If it's a true emergency, like the servers are offline, that's an emergency. Like raise the rings and make people get alerted and work on this problem. But if it's not, let people rest. Let people follow their own times and get rested, because otherwise you're stressing out them the ability to do well when they are on business hours, right? So that's what I mean by being fair. You need to have a specific set of rules, and those rules needs to be extremely enforced. When it comes to, like, if it's there, it's going to be enforced. You don't follow them, you are out. But at the same time, don't overextend them. If it's not there, don't try to be like a bad manager. Don't do things like this. Follow the guideline, the book, and be true to that.
The mandatory rules are mandatory. And so being super transparent and specific about what happens if they're not followed, but also know that we're not optimizing for like connecting X number of hours every day, but it's more like getting the most out of everyone. And so in the times of more intense work, everyone will be willing to work more, but we also know how to stop pressuring when there is no need because the team needs to rest, and it creates confidence, and so people are not working because they're scared of whatever happens um, to the job that I can be doing. But I feel that I'm more part of the mission and that I'm more engaged with what we're trying to achieve, being there in the hardest moment, and also being there when we can recover and reflect and take the growth um, that we've had on the more intensive phases. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. AI. So, okay, I know it's a buzzword. I know everyone's speaking about it, but what does classic? I mean, I believe that in your system there is a lot of recommenders, like recommendation systems, and like this is like more classical machine learning things that have been here for a lot of time. But I'm curious about how you approach um, AI in general in the company, and because you're AI first, and you're adopting strongly, you mentioned like some computer vision scenarios that you are doing, or maybe you're using multimodal transformers to do the feature of photos that you were describing before. So, what can you share with us about your insights on why are you bullish on adopting AI in your industry?
Well, I think, of course, there is a productivity aspect that people like to focus on. Oh, use AI, you're going to save time and all those things. Um, I agree with that. There is a second factor that I'd like to talk a little bit about more, which is the coolness factor and how people can pay for it. Sometimes there is something that's going to be the same um, cost, for example, to produce, so the same experience, but the experience will be extremely different, right? So, for example, you may go to an event and you have to scan something, right? But then you do this differently, right? Disney was really successful in creating this. They have really standard things in the end. If you see that, just the way that you do them, that's really cool from other places. So that sells really well, especially if you're in the entertainment business like us, where you're going to get something done in a different way, something way that's unique, that's going to amuse people, that's going to make them interest in how your company operates. You can put a lot of effort into this, and AI was really key into allowing us to do those things. We have been able to create new experiences, for example, just because AI exists now. They were not possible before. So you can use AI for productivity, but you can also use AI to amuse people with experiences that were not possible to do with just human labor before.
This is something that I'm hearing over and over, and it really looks like so you have the key players. So when I speak about Gen AI, you have Google with Gemini, OpenAI, Anthropic, Hugging Face, and then we have other building blocks, let's say LangChain or like building agents, agentic systems. And so there are all these foundational technologies, I would say. Um, but what's emerging and what I like to compare to the internet at the beginning is in the user experience because we have those LLMs or those multimodal models that we can integrate in our systems, and because their price is continuously decreasing, it makes them commodities to build things with. They can tremendously enhance the personalization and user experience. Um, and this is something that we're hearing over and over and over. Uh, and and I truly agree with. And so I was curious if you had maybe some insights or examples about how can you use. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't need to be at InEvent specifically, but is it something that you're also experiencing in terms of you can just improve the UX? Like, what do you mean when you say that you couldn't do some specific things before? Could you share maybe some examples or things that you're really excited about?
Yeah, of course. Let me just go back to the photo match AI example, right? Before, if you wanted to tag, like 1,000 photos with the ones that you're in, the way to do that was like you gonna go 1,000 times through the photos and be tagging, saying, "Oh, you're in this photo, you're not in this photo," right? So it was not humanly capable to do that ourselves. Like we needed to have some machine, but the machines did not have the knowledge to scan faces and match you exactly with what you wanted. So it's something that only with AI that we were able to do that. But now there are other experiences that you could do with kind of the same speed. For example, let's say check-in. You could go to an event and then there is like a machine that scans your face and know exactly where you are and who you are, and you can get into the event. If it was done by a human, it could probably be the same time because you know who they are and you can easily check and just look at the faces and and there will be a queue anyway. But the experience is different, right? So it's not really that it could not be done before, but it's now that it's a different way of doing it. It's a cool new way of automating the process and getting to an event that people really, oh, that's really cool that I can do that. So
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, I'm super curious about the specific problems. So okay, so we've discussed a lot of interesting things. So maybe I have a few um, last points that
yeah,
I'd like to touch. I guess three questions.
okay.
Um, so let's make them two. Um, the first one is: do you have a message for the Let's Talk AI community? And maybe a lot of time I try to not do not give any indications, but maybe for the founders that are like have an idea and want to build things, if you have one thing that you'd like to say to your younger self, this typical question.
Well, I would say build something that you like, build something that you think is going to be successful and try to validate this right there. Um, Really truly there is no magical thing that you can do today and it's going to make you successful tomorrow. I'm a big believer that the companies that really truly explode the next day or they had a really amount of good success in a short time, they were just a combination of luck and doing something that the founders like. But I know personally so many founders that built something that they like. They're really smart, really capable, but they didn't put their assets in the right timing, or for example in the right space that was raising a lot of funds at that same time. So it's a bit of luck as well, but try to figure out what you like to do and build it and validate on the market, and that's going to be, it can be successful or not. So yeah, if I say going from 0 to maybe 10 million, you can do it. You don't, like, if you have a company and you don't get to $10 million in like 30, 40 years, it's your fault. Getting to 100 million, you can probably do it. If you put a lot of effort, if you stay a long time, you can do that. But $1 billion, you need some luck to do that. It doesn't require any more your knowledge. You really truly need some type of external factor like a pandemic, some type of like magical timing in order to build something like this. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for your time. My wrap up question is: where can everyone find more about InEvent and yourself? Do you have anything that you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to connect on the socials, Pedro Goes on Twitter. I like to call Twitter still. And on LinkedIn, you can follow me or share insights. And yeah, if you need anything event related, inevent.com, it's where we are.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Pedro. I had an amazing time and I wish you to have an amazing day.
Thank you, Thomas. Fantastic.